It was -15 degrees, and I was pretty sure this was how I was going to die. I was 19, curled up in the driver's seat of my old Honda Civic, trying to force my lungs to keep breathing in air that felt like tiny knives. The battery was dead, so the heater was just a useless piece of plastic. My phone had died hours ago. I'd stopped shivering, which I remembered from some health class was a very bad sign. I was just tired. So tired. I closed my eyes just for a second. That's when a sharp, heavy knock shattered the silence. Not on the door, on the frost-covered glass right next to my head. Have you ever felt completely invisible, even to your own family? Let me know your story down in the comments. It's funny how your life can shatter in a moment. 4 years ago, I had a dad. 4 years ago, I had a home. My dad died on a Tuesday. Pancreatic cancer. It was fast, brutal, and it hollowed out our house. My mom, Jessica, didn't stay hollow for long. Within 6 months, the smell of Dad's Old Spice cologne was replaced by her new expensive perfume, and the quiet sadness of our house was replaced by the booming voice of David. David was wealthy, polished, and looked at me like I was a piece of furniture that came with the house he was acquiring. When I was 15, they got married. A small, tasteful ceremony. I wasn't a bridesmaid, I was a witness standing off to the side. A week later, Mom sat me down. "Abby," she said, stirring her tea, "David and I are moving, and we've decided it's best for you to have some stability. You'll go live with your Aunt Nicole in Boston." Just like that. Shipped off. I wasn't her daughter anymore. I was a loose end from her old life. Beacon Hill is where the old money lives in Boston. The brick houses are perfect, the trees are perfect, and the people are perfectly cold. My Aunt Nicole was my mother's younger sister, and she'd always carried a sharp edge of resentment. She greeted me at the door with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. My cousins Samantha and Tyler, who were 18 and 17, looked me up and down like I was something they'd found stuck to their shoe. "You'll be in the attic room," Aunt Nicole said, leading me up 3 flights of stairs. It was cold, dusty, and small, with one round window that looked out over the rooftops. That night, she sat me down for a chat. "Abigail," she said, her voice crisp, "we're happy to have you, but it's important you learn responsibility. Your parents left you a trust. I understand, so you can certainly afford to contribute." I had no idea what she was talking about. My dad was a high school teacher. We weren't poor, but we weren't trust fund people. "I don't think—" "Nonsense," she cut me off. "David and Jessica explained everything. We'll start you at $500 a month for rent. It's the least you can do to learn the value of money." $500. I was 15. I had about $70 to my name for my last birthday. How am I supposed to? "You'll get a job, of course," she said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "The Daily Grind down on Charles Street is hiring. Samantha says their lattes are terrible, but I'm sure it's fine for this." So 2 days after moving in, I was washing dishes and wiping down counters at the Daily Grind. I worked every day after school from 3 until they closed at 9. My first paycheck was $430. I remember looking at it feeling this swell of pride. I'd earned this. All of it. I brought it home and handed the cash to Aunt Nicole. She didn't count it in front of me, just tucked it into her expensive leather wallet. "See," she said, patting my shoulder. "Responsibility. It feels good, doesn't it?" I went up to my cold attic room, my hands smelling like burnt coffee and bleach, and realized I had just paid $500 for a room I barely slept in a house where no one wanted me, and I still owed her $70. That $500 a month lasted exactly 2 months. Aunt Nicole caught me in the hallway as I was leaving for my shift. "Abigail," she said, tapping a letter against her hand, "the property taxes have just gone up. It's astronomical. I'm afraid your rent will have to be $1,000 a month starting immediately." 1,000. I did the math in my head. My job at the Daily Grind barely covered the first 500. There was no way. I don't think I can afford that, Aunt Nicole." She gave me that perfectly cold smile. "Well, you'll have to find a way, won't you, responsibility, Abigail?" I was desperate. That night I saw a flyer in the break room for janitorial staff at a financial building downtown. The hours were 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. It was brutal, but it paid. My new life became a 24-hour loop of exhaustion. 11 p.m. to 5 a.m., wiping down empty cubicles and scrubbing toilets in a silent, empty skyscraper. The only person I ever saw was Frank the night guard, who would nod at me as I signed in. 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. sleeping in my car in the parking garage because it wasn't worth going back to Beacon Hill. 8 a.m. to 2 p.m., trying to stay awake in my community college classes. 3 p.m. to 9 p.m., slinging lattes at the Daily Grind, smiling until my face hurt. 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. driving back to the financial district trying to get an hour of sleep in the car before my janitor shift. I was a ghost. I was running on caffeine and pure, unfiltered panic. The only time my family ever saw me was when they'd come into the coffee shop to remind me how much of a failure I was. Samantha and Tyler started bringing their private school friends. It became their favorite sport. "Oh my God, look, it's my janitor," Cousin Samantha would say loud enough for the whole shop to hear, making my latte just like she cleans my toilet. Tyler would film it for his Instagram story. Look at her, he'd narrate, zooming in on my face. "This is what happens when you don't have a personality. Hashtag scrub life." They'd leave a pile of pennies as a tip. People always ask, why did you stay? Why did you let them treat you like that? It's a fair question. But you have to understand you're not just living with the abuse, you're living with the guilt. I felt like I owed them. I was living in their perfect house, breathing their expensive air. I was the one whose parents had died, leaving everyone else to clean up the mess. I was a burden. And when you're told you're a burden every single day in 1,000 small ways, you start to believe it. It's a prison without any bars. Psychologists call it learned helplessness. You're so convinced that you have no power and no options that you stop looking for the exit even when it's right in front of you. I wasn't living. I was just surviving. I was surviving barely. I had managed to scrape together $214, which I kept hidden under the thin mattress in my attic room. It was my escape fund. It wasn't much, but it was a start. One morning after my cleaning shift, I dragged myself all the way back to Beacon Hill. I was exhausted and just wanted to sleep in a real bed for a few hours. I climbed the stairs to my room, pushed open the door, and froze. My room was ransacked. The mattress was flipped over. The small box I kept my few pieces of jewelry in was empty. And the $214 was gone. I knew it was Samantha. I confronted her downstairs. She was doing her makeup at the kitchen island looking bored. "I have no idea what you're talking about," she said, not even looking at me. "Maybe you just lost it. You seem so stressed lately." I looked at Aunt Nicole, who was sipping her coffee and reading the paper. "Aunt Nicole, someone stole my money." She sighed, annoyed. "Abigail, if you can't keep track of your own things, that's not our problem. Don't accuse Samantha. She wouldn't be interested in your little tip jar." That was it. That was the moment the last thread snapped. They didn't just not care. They enjoyed it. I didn't say another word. I went upstairs, packed my old high school backpack with my 2 work uniforms, my toothbrush, and my dad's old watch. I walked back down the stairs past all of them in the kitchen and out the front door. No one called after me. I got into my old Honda Civic. I had 3/4 of a tank of gas and about $30 in my wallet. I had no idea where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay. I drove to the multi-level parking garage near the financial building, found a dark corner on the 3rd level, reclined my seat, and closed my eyes. It was better than the attic. At least here no one expected me to be grateful. I jolted awake, my head smacking the steering wheel. The knock came again, harder this time. Thump, thump, thump. It wasn't a question. It was a command. My heart hammered against my ribs. Was it security, the police? Had Tyler and Samantha tracked me down again? I wiped a small circle of fog off the frosted glass. A man was standing there. He was older, maybe in his 50s, wearing an expensive-looking dark wool coat. He wasn't a cop. He wasn't homeless. He just looked serious. And then I recognized him. It was the man from the black SUV. The one I'd see parked across from the financial building some nights just watching. I'd always assumed he was some high-powered executive working late or maybe security. My blood went cold. He was the reason Frank, the night guard, had been so jumpy lately. I stared at him, terrified, my mind racing. What did he want? He didn't yell. He didn't look angry. He just met my eyes through the tiny clear patch of glass and spoke, his voice muffled but clear. "Abigail." How did he know my name? Unlock the door. I was too cold and too scared to think straight. I fumbled with the lock and pushed the door open a few inches. The negative 15-degree air hit my face, making me gasp. "Who are you?" My voice was a weak croak. He didn't step back. "My name is Robert. I'm your uncle." I had no Uncle Robert. My dad was an only child. I don't have an Uncle Robert. "I'm your father's brother," he said, his voice impatient. "We don't have time for this. Your father would kill me if I let you freeze to death. Let's go." My father. He'd said father, not brother. I didn't know what was happening. Was I hallucinating from the cold? But he was real. He was holding out a gloved hand. I had no other options. freezing to death, or going with the mysterious man who claimed to be my uncle. I grabbed my backpack and stumbled out of the Civic. My legs were so numb I almost collapsed, but he caught my elbow, his grip surprisingly strong. He didn't say another word, just steered me toward the massive glass doors of the financial building, the place I cleaned every night. My shift doesn't start 4. You don't work here anymore, he said, not unkindly. He didn't go to the main entrance. He led me to a small, unmarked door to the side, one I'd always assumed was for maintenance. He didn't use a key card. He pulled out a heavy, old-fashioned brass key, inserted it into a lock, and the door clicked open. We weren't in the main lobby I usually cleaned. We were in a small private elevator lobby, all marble and dark wood. He pressed the button. The doors opened. Inside, there was no keypad for different floors, just one single button that said PHA. Penthouse. He pressed it, and the elevator began to move silent and fast. We went up past the cubicle farms on 10 and 11 past the executive suites on 12 I was never allowed to touch. The elevator didn't slow down. It kept going higher than I knew the building went. The doors slid open, not into a hallway, but directly into an apartment. No, not an apartment. It was vast. The entire top floor of the building. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the lights of Boston spread out like a carpet of jewels. It was warm, so warm. The air smelled like coffee and old books. I just stood there clutching my backpack, leaving a puddle of melting snow on his perfect hardwood floor. "Get in, Abigail," Robert said, closing the elevator door behind us. "We have a lot to talk about." I just stood there dripping on the imported rug, my mind trying to catch up. The place was silent. It didn't feel like a home. It felt like a command center. One entire wall was a bank of security monitors, dark for now. "Sit," he said, pointing to a leather couch that probably cost more than my car. I sat my backpack still on like a shield. He walked over to a wet bar, poured 2 glasses of water, and handed one to me. My hands were shaking so hard the water sloshed over the rim. "I own this building, Abigail," he said, not looking at me but at the city lights. "I own the parking garage you sleep in. I own the company you clean for. And I own the coffee shop where you work in the afternoons." I just stared at him. None of this made any sense. Why would you let me?" "Because your father made me promise," he said, his voice quiet. He walked over to a bookshelf and pulled down a framed photo. He wiped the dust off it and handed it to me. It was 2 teenagers, skinny and grinning, sitting on the hood of a beat-up van. One of them, the one with the goofy smile, was my dad. The other one, younger, more serious, was Robert. "I'm your father's brother," he said. "His older brother." "My dad was an only child," I whispered, though the resemblance in the photo was undeniable. "That's what your mother told you. That's what she told everyone. After he died," Robert said, his voice hardening, "it was cleaner that way. Your mother didn't like our side of the family. We were the poor side. The side that reminded her where your father came from." He pointed to the van in the photo. "That was our home for 2 years. We grew up sleeping in cars, Abby. We grew up on gas station, food, and cold nights. Your dad, he fought his way out. He got scholarships, he became a teacher, he met your mother, and he built a respectable life. But I went a different route." He gestured around the penthouse. "I started with one laundromat. Your dad co-signed the loan. He gave me every penny he had. We built this business together, this building, all of it. This was his as much as it is mine." I was trying to process the information. My dad, a businessman I don't understand. If this was his, why did you let me live like that? Why was I scrubbing toilets for you? "Because that was the plan," he said. "Your father's plan. He was so proud of you, but he was terrified. Terrified you had your mother's softness. Terrified that if you were just given everything you'd never learn to fight. He made me promise. If anything ever happened to him, I wouldn't just hand you your inheritance. I had to test you. I had to know you had his strength, his resilience." He walked over to the bank of monitors and flipped a switch. The screens flickered to life. My stomach dropped. It was me. Dozens of videos of me. Me at 3 a.m. mopping the lobby. Me in the coffee shop forcing a smile as Samantha and Tyler filmed me. Me in the parking garage curled up in the driver's seat. Me just hours ago shivering and crying. "I've watched you every single night," he said, his voice thick. "The black SUV, that was my security team. I had them follow you, make sure no one hurt you. You watched me. I felt sick. You watched me freeze." "It was the hardest damn thing I've ever done," he snapped, turning to face me. And for the first time I saw something other than power in his eyes. I saw pain. This wasn't a cold, calculating test from a billionaire. This was a promise made by a grieving brother. He'd been trapped. He was bound by his oath to my dad. To let me prove myself. But he was watching his niece nearly die in the process. He'd been stuck between his love for his dead brother and his growing fear for me. I didn't know when to step in, he admitted, his voice cracking. Your father said I'd know. He said, don't let her break, but let her bend. But last night, -15. That wasn't bending, that was breaking. I couldn't honor his promise if it meant letting his daughter die. He looked at the screen showing me asleep in my car. He would have never forgiven me for that. I would have never forgiven me. He'd been carrying this burden alone. This promise that forced him to watch, to wait, to hope his brother's faith in me was justified, all while feeling the hilt of his own regret for every night he let me suffer. I'm sorry, Abby, he said. I'm so sorry I let it go this far. But your father, God, he would be so proud of you. You didn't break. You passed his impossible, stupid test. I just sat there trying to make the world stop spinning. My dad, the man who taught me how to ride a bike and helped me with my algebra homework, he had built an empire. I don't know what to say, I finally managed. My dad, he did all this. He built all this, Robert corrected me, walking back to the wall of windows. He was the brains, I was the muscle. He saw the patterns, the opportunities. I just made the deals. He pointed down at the street toward the daily grind. That coffee shop, that was his idea. He said people would pay $5 for a cup of coffee if it made them feel successful. I told him he was crazy. He smiled a small, sad smile. He wasn't. He turned back to me, his expression serious. This penthouse, Abby, it's yours. It was always meant to be yours. This building, the other properties. It's all part of a trust your father set up for you. I was just the executor and the gatekeeper. My mind reeled. A trust, an inheritance. But, Aunt Nicole, my mom, they said. They said what Robert's voice went cold. That your dad was just a high school teacher, that he left you nothing. Mom, she sent me to Aunt Nicole's. She said I was a burden. Aunt Nicole. She charged me $500, then $1,000. Robert's jaw tightened. Of course she did. Your Aunt Nicole, he said, and the name sounded like poison in his mouth, is your mother's sister. She has hated me, and by extension your father, since the day your mother married him. She was furious that your mother married down to a poor kid from the wrong side of town. And when your father became more successful than anyone in her precious Beacon Hill family, that jealousy turned toxic. It clicked. The cruelty, the rent, the way she looked at me. It wasn't just because I was an inconvenience. It was resentment. I was the living, breathing reminder of the man she despised for being better than her. She couldn't touch him, especially after your mother cut ties with us. So when your mother abandoned you on her doorstep, Nicole finally had a target for all that bitterness. She knew. She knew your father was successful. She didn't know how successful. No one did. That was part of his plan. Stay quiet. Stay humble. Don't show your hand. Robert sat down in the leather chair across from me. But that part of your life is over, Abby. The test is done. Now the work begins. Work. Your father didn't just want to give you an inheritance. He wanted to give you a legacy. Starting tomorrow, you're not going to be cleaning this building. You're going to be learning how to run it. He gestured to the dark monitors. I've watched you for 2 years. I saw you balancing the books for that laundromat I used to own. The one your dad and I started in. I saw you handle inventory at the coffee shop. You have his mind for numbers. You see the patterns. You're a natural. I looked down at my hands still raw and red from the cleaning chemicals. Last night, I was a janitor. A ghost living in a car. I don't know anything about running a business, I whispered. Neither did we, Robert said. But you know how to survive. You know how to work. You know how to spot a lie. Everything else I can teach you. He stood up and walked to a large mahogany desk. He pulled out a new set of keys different from the brass one. They were sleek, modern, attached to a heavy leather fob. These are yours, he said, dropping them into my hand. The penthouse, the car in the private garage, the office downstairs. Your father's office, actually. It's been waiting for you. I closed my hand around the keys, the metal cold and solid. This wasn't charity. This wasn't a rescue. This was a graduation. I had survived. I had been tested. And I had been found worthy. I wasn't the unwanted daughter. I was the heir. I spent that first week learning. Robert walked me through the business, through my father's old notes, through the complex web of properties and investments they had built together. I wasn't just learning finance. I was learning about my dad. He wasn't just the man who taught me algebra. He was a quiet genius. My first official act as a member of the company wasn't signing a big deal. It was a phone call to my uncle. "Frank," I said, "the night guard at the downtown building, I want to do something for him." Robert didn't question it. "What do you have in mind?" "He's been working that night shift for 15 years. He's got a daughter starting college," I said. "I want to set up a small trust for her education. And I want to give Frank a raise and a full-time day shift with benefits. He's earned it." Robert just smiled. "Your father would have liked that. Consider it done." When I told Frank, the gruff old guard just stared at me, his eyes watering. He didn't say anything, just pulled me into a rough hug that smelled like coffee and aftershave. In that moment, sitting in my father's expensive office, I didn't feel rich. I just felt useful, and I finally understood the difference. I look back on that journey from that frozen car to this penthouse, and I realize my story isn't just my own. It's a letter. It's a letter to every person out there who has ever felt like they were on the outside. This is for you. The one who always feels like you're on the other side of the door. The one who is always giving while everyone else is just taking. The one who gets the polite smile at family dinners but is never truly seen. You are the one who is too sensitive or too quiet or too much. You are the scapegoat, the black sheep, the one who carries the burdens no one else is willing to acknowledge. I need you to listen to me. Your value is not determined by their inability to see it. You are not invisible just because they choose to look away. You are not a burden. You are a resource they are not wise enough to invest in. Your resilience, the strength you've had to build in silence, the kindness you've managed to keep, even when the world has given you every reason to be cruel, that is not a weakness. That is your superpower. Stop waiting for them to invite you to the table. Go out and build your own. And when you do make, damn sure you only save seats for the people who saw your worth when you were still standing on the outside.